Welcome to the office of Demonology. I'm Dr. J, retired demon hunter and knower of things. Happy Earth Day. If you're out celebrating, it's a beautiful day here in Pennsylvania. What's it like where you are? Let me know in the comments below. I'm going to go through my thrift store book haul, volume 4. These are coming from thrift stores that I went to. Some are from a library sale that I went to, which if you haven't done library sales, look them up. You could just Google your local library and they'll have events, and that stuff's super cheap, but it was crazy. I'll get into that. And finally, some other stuff from thrift stores that my friend John picked up for me while he was out thrifting. There's no particular order I'm going to go through. I'm just going to pick up the book, explain why I picked it up, tell you what I know about it, if I know anything, maybe read the back of the book. So go get your favorite beverage and join me on this adventure. First up, The Girl in Alfred Hitchcock's Shower. A murder that became a real-life mystery, a mystery that became a mystery that became an obsession. This is by Robert Graysmith. What I know about this is absolutely nothing, but I do know that Janet Leigh in Psycho wasn't in all the shots, so anything that looked risque would have been another actress. She was the body double for Janet Leigh. I didn't think she got murdered. So I'm not sure what this is about. I don't think she was murdered, so maybe it's someone else. So you're saying, well, James, you don't know that much about it. Why the hell would you pick it up? Actually, Alfred Hitchcock and I share the same birthday. I'm also a huge fan of his movies, and Psycho in particular. So this seems to be something to do with Psycho. I don't know. But when I'm finished reading it, I absolutely will do a review of this book. It's also in great condition. No reason why I shouldn't have picked this up. This was from Goodwill. The Girl in Alfred Hitchcock's Shower. Let's move on. Next up is Bowling Alone by Robert Putnam. This book I know about from a podcast I listened to, and it might have been the Science of Success podcast. That podcast, I buy so many books from the people who come in and talk with the host. This is one, and this actually is close to what Regina and I talk about on the most recent writing fiction podcast. It's called Social Media is Dead, and we talk about how in order for creatives to actually work with online sites like Instagram and Facebook, like TikTok, Twitter, they're not really helping the creative out today. And so I'm saying there's going to be a return to community, an online community, starting with something like Patreon, right? Where you have a community and then hopefully bring that community out for an event in the real world. Bowling Alone is a lot about how we used to get together as communities and how that no longer exists. It's funny because I think I actually got this book when I was in Rochester, New York at a Goodwill. If I go somewhere, I check out the thrift stores in the towns I go. I've been looking for this book. Actually, I haven't been looking for it. It was in my Amazon wish list, just sitting there. I was eventually going to buy it. When I saw it in the thrift store, I'm like, definitely going to read this because I loved hearing the author speak about how communities change and how we should be returning to those communities. And I believe that is going to happen. And I think it's a great thing for creatives to think that way and to find out how can they bring the people who enjoy their work online into a community online that they have control over. Like, for example, if TikTok gets banned in the United States, you might have worked years to build up that following and now it's gone in a flash. You need something that you can hold on to, which is like an email list or something. So Substack does that, you got that with Patreon. So you want to find an online community that you have control over, not only the list, but also that they will see your content. Most people subscribe to stuff and never see the content that they signed up for. I'm really excited about reading this and finding out more. All right, this book is Ghost I Have Been, a novel by Richard Peck. Also, this book is signed by the author. You can see that. And it's signed in 1991. Let me put my glasses on here so we can talk about this. Yeah, Sincerely Richard Peck, summer of '91. This was a library book. Now, I'm not a fan of picking up books that were library books because they put this plastic cover and it's taped on, I can't get it off, and then it has this, and then usually on the back you have something that was torn out here where the card used to go. But it's a fun cover. It's autographed, so I will forgive that. Why I'm excited about this, if you look up here, you can actually see on the cover, that's the Titanic. She not only has this ability to see ghosts, but also to travel through time to different disasters, something like that, but she's trying to change history. That's about all I know about this. So I'm excited to dive into this book, which I did pick up at a thrift store somewhere, not sure where. Next up, I picked this up at the library book sale, which there was not a book over $2. Everything was $2 or less. And I picked up Gone Girl, and I haven't read it, but people talk really highly about this book. This is a book I have wanted to read, but never wanted to pay full price for. A lot of people talk about this book, and for me, I wanted to see how it's written and what I can glean from the author and how they write this to see why so many people really dig this book. So I'm looking forward to it. She also did Sharp Objects, which I liked that show too. I don't remember if I saw Gone Girl, the movie. I think is Ben Affleck in that? If so, let me know in the comments. I don't know. I'm not going to watch it. I usually try to read the books before I watch movies. Another book from the book sale at the library. This one I love. It's called Evil, The Science Behind Humanity's Dark Side. Obviously, somebody who works in the office of demonology, you want to know everything there is to know about evil, especially if you're a retired demon hunter and knower of things. So this book is by Julia Shaw, and this is purely research for me, and I will share what I learned on this channel. So if you hit that subscribe, hit that bell, you'll know when I post things, and I will be talking a lot about the books I read that are nonfiction and whether you should pick them up or not. Oh, look, it's my cat George. That's my cat's tail. All right, George, you joining me? Another book from the library, Ray Bradbury. You know, I was thinking, let's see if I can get this. Ray Bradbury's Driving Blind. It's a collection of short stories, and I was thinking, Ray Bradbury might be my favorite author. I have a lot of Stephen King. I do have a lot of Bradbury, but I think, it's funny, I'm actually sitting here with my cat, George, and then you have Ray Bradbury is on the back with his cat. Right, George? You want to see the cat? This was at the library, and it is a library book, but it's an old one, and I was excited to see it because it is a book I don't have with probably a lot of short stories I've never read by Ray Bradbury. So I picked this up. This was probably my favorite find at the library. Most of the stuff at the library book sale were newer books. And there wasn't anything like old and vintage and stuff. You're like, that's a collector's item. So I was a little disappointed in that, but I also wasn't disappointed because there were so many people. There was a long line to get in. And when we got in, you couldn't even get up to the tables to see the book unless you're a really rude person and were pushing people out of the way, which they were there. So yeah, I was happy to see this and get it because it probably would have left. Someone would have bought it if I didn't. $2, can't beat it. Right, George? Let's say hi, George. Hello, I'm George the cat. All right, here is another book from the library. And this is another book that I've been wanting to read, but didn't want to pay full price. And here's the thing. So Ashley Flowers is the host of Crime Junkies along with Britt. And I knew she put this book out, and I knew it was something I wanted to read. But again, at Target, even with 30% off, I probably wouldn't want to pay because it was, what's the price on this book? $28. $28 minus 30%, still too much for me. I'm very cheap when it comes to books. And I'm cheap because I know I can get it for $2 eventually, right? So why go out and buy a brand new book when I can get it for so cheap? And this is in beautiful condition. There's Ashley on the back. Let's see it. There she is. The podcast is like one of the most #1 podcasts of all time. It's up there. So she does write a good podcast. So I'm hoping she also writes a good book. I'm a big true crime fan. Have anybody read this yet? Because if you're a true crime fan and you listen to Crime Junkies, you might have read this. I wonder what your opinions are on that. Right, George? Next up, a Stephen King book I haven't read called The Institute. What's interesting about this is I just watched a YouTube video of Joe Hill and Stephen King talking about their books when they came out. Full Throttle, which I have back here, signed by Joe Hill. And then Stephen King was talking about The Institute. Now, I haven't read this. This is in beautiful condition, and I got this from John. So John was out at a thrift store. He said, hey, do you want this? I'm like, yeah, I don't have it. I love these first edition. Not hard to get first edition Stephen King when it's a newer book, but this is in beautiful condition. I'm looking forward to diving into this book by Stephen King, The Institute. Now, what's it say on the back? The playground was surrounded by a chain link fence at least 10 feet high, and Luke saw cameras peering down at 2 of the corners. They were dusty as if they hadn't been cleaned in a while. Beyond the fence, there was nothing but forest, mostly pines. Whatever the Institute was, it was in the middle of an old-growth forest, which meant in the middle of nowhere. So there's this interesting place in the middle of nowhere. This is another John one. Or no. This I picked up when I was thrifting with John. This is Stephen King's Dreamcatcher. Haven't read it. It's not in the best condition. And I do like these things, even though it probably devalues the book. It says inside, Stephen Schmoyer started Saturday, May 4th, 2002, and finished Thursday, May 9th, 2002. And then it says, nicht wahr. I don't know if that's German, because it looks like it's spelled wrong. Not, and then there's a question mark. I'll have to look that up. But I kind of dig that. And that's pretty fast to read this book. This is a thick book. But the dust jacket's in little, dirty looking. Other than that, this guy, Stephen Schmoyer, actually wrote a lot in this book. So you can see him putting little margin things. When I read it, it'll be interesting. It might smell a little like it was in a cigarette smoking house. Picking this up for $2, right? I'm not collecting this for this one. I want to read it. I have it. I'll read it. And then eventually I want to find a very pristine first edition of this and replace this one. That's kind of what I'll do. And then I'll throw this back at the thrift store or sell it somewhere. I don't know. I think this one was also from the library book sale. And this is another nonfiction book that I'll probably talk about on this channel. It's called A History of Pagan Europe. This, to me, is fascinating. I love the history of pagan Europe and the fact that when Christianity came along and everything started to change, and a lot of the Christian holidays were really just pagan holidays that were, converted to Christian holidays because people didn't want to give up their holidays. They liked their holidays. So it's like, hey, I'm not giving up this, so we'll call it something else and say it's a Christian holiday. Constantine was baptized into Christianity by an Arian bishop on his deathbed on Whit Sunday, 337. He never followed the Christian sectarians in persecuting non-Christians, but his 3 sons did. In 340, a ban was put on pagan sacrifices, superstition, and unsoundness of thinking in the East. And in 342, this edict was extended to the whole empire. In 346, public sacrifices were banned and pagan observance was made a capital offense. The pagans kept their heads down and waited for the tide of history to sweep the new sect away. Yeah, so the pagans were like, all right, let's just keep it quiet. Now, when they say in 346, public sacrifice, they're not talking about human sacrifices. They're talking about like sacrificing a chicken or something like that. So those were banned, and Christianity was very mean if you didn't follow suit. All right, this one I found at a thrift store, and it's a new thrift store that I discovered recently called Liberty Ministries. I am so happy I found this. This is from 1983, the hardcover storybook of Return of the Jedi. This is beautiful, beautiful condition. I mean, it looks like no one even opened this to look at it. It is so mint. I am super stoked to have found this. This is a great find and a wonderful addition to my collection. All right, John found me this at a thrift store and thought I might like it. It's called Jack the Ripper, 100 Years of Investigations, the Facts, the Fiction, the Solution by Terence Sharkey. I will be very fascinated to look into this because I do know a lot about the Jack the Ripper case. I also know that we have a lot of misinformation throughout the centuries about this. One, for example, is that Jack the Ripper killed prostitutes. And if you think that's true, I advise you reading a book called The Five. And it's about the 5 women that were killed and why they're not really prostitutes, but just the way people looked at women back in that day, especially single women. There was so many awful views on women. And, you know, it's a great book called The Five. Read it and you'll see. So I'm curious how this book, plus the other stuff I know about Jack the Ripper, I want to see how this book fares, and I'm sure I will do a video, and so make sure you subscribe. This is another book John thought I would like, and he is right. It is Ghost Hunters, Ed and Lorraine Warren by Robert David Chase. On the back there you can see Ed and Lorraine Warren. Now, if you watch this channel, you know I'm not a fan of them. I don't believe they are actual demonologists like I am, Dr. J, retired demon hunter and know other things. I think they're frauds, and there's a lot of evidence to support that. I didn't know this says there's more books by Ed and Lorraine Warren, and there's a whole series: Graveyard, The Haunted, A Dark Place, Werewolf, Satan's Harvest, and this is just one called Ghost Hunters, and this is the true accounts of the demonologists featured in the film The Conjuring. I love the films, by the way, they're great. So yeah, I will be happy to read this, and hey, a good ghost story, whether it's true or not, is a good ghost story. I think this is the last book John got me. It's a novel of modern witchcraft called Witch's Sabbath. Look at that cover. By Charity Blackstock. Writing as Paula Arladice. This is an excellent story of love, witchcraft, and murder. The brew is chillingly suspenseful, the Tulsa world. This was originally owned by Pamela Blanco. Hello, Pamela, I have your book. Yeah, first printing was 1967, second printing was 70, and the copyright's 1961. I mean, it's a pretty sloppy looking book. Like, I mean, it hasn't, considering it's over 50 years old, it's not in bad shape. But I'm really looking forward to that. It seems to be sort of historical fiction, it looks like to me. But I will enjoy that one. All right, this is a thrift store find for me. And this is Clive Barker, Weave World. Never read that, loved Clive Barker. Picked it up and said, I can't wait to read a Clive Barker sci-fi. Is it sci-fi or fantasy? An epic adventure of the imagination. It's fantasy, not sci-fi. So I've heard about this. I haven't read it. So that will be fun. This book I picked up, Agatha Christie, Murder on the Orient Express. And the reason is I, years and years and years and years ago, you always hear about Agatha Christie, and I was like, I'm going to pick one up. And I read the book, and I wasn't that much of a fan. So I thought maybe it was the book. This one's a very popular title, so I thought it's probably one of her most famous books. So let me look into reading this. Oh, look at this. Karen K. PD78. Little reminder for Karen K. there. So another book that I am looking forward to reading, Murder on the Orient Express. I don't know if we're allowed to say Orient anymore. Agatha. You're not woke, Agatha Christie. All right. This book I picked up only because it's called Witch by Barbara Michaels, who I don't know. A silent stranger moves in twilight shadows. That's all I need to hear. That's all I need to hear. And have a cat on the cover. See that? And there's a cat on the cover. You put a cat on the cover that looks like that in front of a scary house, call it Witch. I'm buying it for $2. Has anybody read Barbara Michaels? It'll be my first time reading her. All right, next up, I got this at the same place I got Witch. It's called, I believe, Wizard, W-I-Z-R-D, in the tradition of Christopher Pike. I thought that was interesting. I also think that this is Stranger Things, but tell me that cover is not Stranger Things with the bike. This is by Steve Zell. And then you got that weird chasm and the kids down there. Looks like Stranger Things. More than just a hole in the ground, it's a gateway to hell. Now, there's a movie called The Gate that has the same story, or at least the same tagline, with these kids that go into this hole that becomes a gateway to hell. The Gate's a great movie, and I remember seeing that for the first time in the theater when it came out. This would have been dated 1994, so definitely pre-Stranger Things. A vengeful Indian spirit, I think we should call it Native American spirit. A vengeful Native American spirit is let loose on a desert town. One boy has to become a hero before he loses everything he loves. There is a theme here. The Witch. Ronald Hutton, A History of Fear from Ancient Times to the Present. I think I got this at the book sale at the library. Another nonfiction book. I love the history, and I love sharing the history with you. I will be talking about this when I finish reading. You can see how many books I got, so it's going to take me a really, really long time to go through all this stuff. But when I do, I always come up on here and start to share these with you. And it's got some pictures in the middle, which is nice. All right, I think we have, there are 2 books left. All right, this book, also I believe, I got this at the book sale at the library. This is Philip K. Dick, The Man in the High Castle. It's a show on Amazon Prime. I watched the beginning of the show and I liked it. I did not like it. But again, once I know it's based on something, I feel like I want to stop and read the book. And when I saw this, I'm like, yeah, I got to pick this up. Well, here's the back of the book. It's America in 1962. Slavery is legal once again. The few Jews who still survive hide under assumed names. In San Francisco, the Dao Ching is as common as the Yellow Pages, all because some 20 years earlier the United States lost a war and is now occupied by Nazi Germany and Japan. I mean, what a great retelling of history. What if we lost the war? Plus Philip K. Dick, how can you not buy this? Not the most, it's a pretty crappy cover. I mean, I don't know what's up with this cover. Like the graphic artist was kind of bored that day. You know, maybe he wanted to go home early and he's just like, let's put a gradient on there. All right, I'm going home, guys. Yeah, one more book. This is a weird one to end on. I didn't realize I'd be ending on this because I just grabbed the pile. And you might think this is a weird book. It has nothing to do with most of the stuff. Like most of the stuff is like nonfiction about evil and witches and things like that. And the fiction is usually like sci-fi or horror. This is nonfiction, and it's about habits. And it's by Jen Sincero, which I read her books. I read one of her books about being a badass. This is Badass Habits. Cultivate the confidence, boundaries, and know-how to upgrade your life. Why did I pick this up? This was also at the library book sale. The reason why is I'm currently reading a book about habits called The Power of Habit. I like to read more than one book on the same topic. That kind of helps it get stuck in my head. I want to look at how Jen talks about habits versus The Power of Habit, which is a great book. I also have a book called Atomic Habits, which is a great book. That's by James Clear. Will I talk about these? Because I have, there's a lot more books I am not showing you that are all about writing fiction and writing sentences, just everything about writing. And I haven't shared them with you, mostly because I don't know if anybody cares about those. I might, but if I do, it's probably going to be in just a single, hey, I read this, here's what it's about type thing. Or no, most likely I'll talk about it at the wrap-up at the end of the month. What books did I read at the end of the month? I'll let you know about my writing books that I read. If you're interested in those writing books, let me know in the comments. That's a lot. I'm probably missing some because I'm a little obsessive compulsive about going to thrift stores and buying books. I had my glasses on the whole time so I could read to you. If you like this type of content, definitely hit the subscribe, hit the bell. If you want to join my newsletter, go to the show notes or the description below and you'll see my newsletter on Substack. This is a way of joining the community. You get an occasional free newsletter, and then if you want, you can upgrade that to read some of my short stories. And also, if you're somebody into like you're a creator, maybe you write, maybe you paint, maybe you do some kind of creative art, but you struggle with that, I will be having, like with the upgrade, I do these little letters to help you get through those struggles and help inspire you to create your art, something I've been doing my whole life in every type of creative field. And that's all I got. And I will be back soon with a new video. Peace.